Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Andrew. And the two of us have a really great idea. We've been living here in Poland for a long time. We're both Americans, and we've struggled to learn, and we continue to struggle to learn Polish. And we've made so many mistakes.
And today we're going to give you a little bit of the blooper reel of our collective
mistakes,
years in here, and stuff that we just got wrong.
Just really
to the point
wrong.
Where it was just embarrassing, funny, all of the above. So we'll
at least the ones we remember. Some of them we blacked out.
Sure
yeah, we try not to remember that. So.
Exactly,
And so Amanda, ladies first. Could you start with your story?
I'm going to start. We're going in alphabetical order, and I'm going to start with probably the best one. Okay. So this one has to do with the word Alfons, right?
Alfons,
okay.
yes.
Now, those of you who speak Polish know what this is.
Well, almost all Europeans use this word.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so just so that you know.
It's all, I thought it was just a man's name, an unusual man's name. So anyway, an Alfons, in case you don't know, is a pimp. And one day, early days in Poland, I was out with some work colleagues and friends, and we were in a club called Sinners in Heaven. Grzesznicy w niebie. I mean, this is in wonderful Katowice. And there were the usual collection of characters that would be at this type of club. It was very late at night, early in the morning. And there was a man there who, this was, I guess, 2003-ish. Mm-hmm. So if you could put yourself in the early 2000s.
Yeah, when we still went out.
Yes, long time ago. So, it was like the horrible music. There was a guy, kind of sweatpants, gold chains, neck like a tree trunk, fat flap in the back, bald head, like classic.
Your type.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, my future husband was there. We didn't know each other very well yet. I was still very, very basic with my Polish. And I heard him refer to this man as Alfons. And I thought, well, what is a nice gentleman like my future husband doing knowing somebody
How does
by
he
a
know
first-name
Alfons?
basis who looks
Did they
like
go to
this?
school together?
Yes, and he knows his name and everything. And I was not impressed that he knew this person on a first-name basis. Because he said, that looks like Alfons. To wygląda jak Alfons. Wygląda jak Alfons. So that guy looks like a pimp, is what he said. But
and you assumed that he was a friend of his named
I thought
Alfons.
it was his buddy, and I'm like, I'm not impressed. But anyway, that's my Alfons story. So I misunderstood quite a lot there.
Right. And are there any other words in English that we use for pimp that you could think? Yeah, I really don't know.
No,
not for the most part. We just say pimp,
say
and it's
pimp,
quite popular.
And that's it. Yeah. And as far as I don't really travel in those circles, so maybe there's something else.
All right. So moving on from pimps, I'm going to move to a topic that's a little bit, it's an uncomfortable one for me, and I still have problems pronouncing this word, and that is the Arctic Circle in Polish. Yeah. And I always get it wrong, and it's a word that I don't like using. Luckily, Poland doesn't have the Arctic Circle. So, Koło, podbiegunkowe is what I typically said, which would be the circle of diarrhea. Right?
Yes.
What you want to say instead is podbiegunowe, right? And I said begunki, and I put it together, so it sounds like the circle of diarrhea found in Scandinavia.
Right.
And that's quite embarrassing, and you should have seen how my student responded when I said, oh, what's the Arctic Circle? And I said, Koło, podbiegunkowe. And he started looking at me and laughing, and then I figured out, oh Christ, I just said the circle of diarrhea. And so when we were talking about the Northern Lights, we were actually talking more about diarrhea than anything else. And for my young students, it was quite amusing.
Oh yeah, you get that. Those 12-year-olds will really get a kick out of that.
Diarrhea humor is very interesting for them. Well, why don't we move on to you? Another one you have.
Oh, another one. I have just the weirdest ones. Okay, so a very important bird in Poland is the stork.
The stork.
Bocian, right?
And Bocian.
Yeah, but they nest here, and they're kind of a symbol here.
In America, we do not have these. We don't have storks.
I guess they have storks, don't they?
They come from Africa, right?
Well, maybe not. Come to think of it, I
don't
never
think
saw
we have
stork
storks.
nests, at least where I'm from. But anyway, you see them here, and people really like storks here. It's an important bird here, so it's called Bocian. And then we have the word Zboczeniec, and that is a pervert. And so I, for some reason, mixed the two words early on, and I thought that Zboczeniec was a stork. or that a stork was a pervert. I can't even remember which. But
so you went to the zoo and you saw
yeah,
perverts.
so somebody talking about something a pervert did, and I'm like, what did they? How would a stork? What would a stork be doing in a situation like that? Or
yeah, it is an interesting word, Bocian. Why is it called that? There must be a reason, but Zboczeniec, of course, it means that you deviate, you're perverted, you go to a different direction, you go off the path, right, to a side. That makes sense. But the words do sound somewhat similar, and learning the language, you may confuse them.
Yeah, especially when I think it was more when I heard it than when I saw it. When I saw it, I knew what it was, but when I would hear it, somehow I wouldn't quite catch things, and the context would be way off, obviously. So,
or he's a stork.
Yeah,
he's yes, Bocianem.
Because, you get these things like, what does that mean? He's a stork, you just...
Maybe it means something in American English.
It takes a while when things aren't obvious to figure out what's going on.
All right, and I have one that's not so funny, but it does show you that you just have a simple word, and we were just talking about cars, and we're back to cars, and one of the words is spark plug, a word that, I don't commonly use. I'm not very good.
It comes
with,
up every once in a
while.
while.
Oh, I have to change to spark plug. Now in Polish, as in other languages, as I found out, Świece, meaning candle, but you would say Świece żarowe, the full thing. And when somebody told me for the first time that they were going to change the candles in their car, I was just so incredibly puzzled. I mean, what are you talking about? What type of lights? I thought maybe the lights, maybe something else is going on, or it's a part of a car I don't know anything about. And lo and behold, it's a spark plug, is what the person was talking about. But again, I managed to look like a complete idiot saying, oh, where do you buy these candles?
Because I thought it was something, I actually thought spark plugs were like bezpieczniki or something.
No, those are the fuses.
Those are fuses.
So, this is a different topic altogether.
Yeah, see, I was...
And these words I don't use in everyday language, but when you have an apartment or a car, and then you hear them, you begin to learn them, you have the experience. But at first, Świece, I mean, what?
Right, yeah, that's a totally different...
Nietzsche, Świece, you're thinking, I'm not at the cemetery, I'm at the mechanics.
Exactly, yeah.
So
you learn things in one, for one reason. Okay, you learn about candles or something, and you just have, that's what you have in your head when someone says
But we don't use candles for anything else except...
For candles, right, so yeah.
Church, graveyard, that's it.
It wouldn't make sense to us.
Birthday candles. So,
so a strange one, definitely.
All right, and let's move on to yours. You've gone from perverts and pimps.
To murders. I have all the dark, I've got the dark topics.
Shows you where we live.
Zabić and pobić. Well, yeah, also, when the prefix is in Polish,
That's
I still
horrible.
don't
So
have
let's
command
just, the two words that you mixed up.
I mixed up zabić and pobić. So zabić is to kill, and pobić is just to beat. So I would be hearing, terrible stories, the news, or whatever, something happened where someone is, gets hit or attacked or something, and I'm thinking, oh, they've been killed, or...
That's right, or somebody was hit.
Or someone's killed and I thought they just were hit.
And this is the big thing, as you mentioned, with all these prefixes, just as with English, for Polish speakers, we have all of those ridiculous phrasal verbs.
Right.
And just one element, za or po, can change the entire meaning.
Yeah.
And it really makes a difference. But what I find with bić is also the problem is that our pronunciation and their pronunciation is they have a short bić for to be.
Right.
Pobić would mean to be in a location.
And then you have pobyt, which is a stay.
Yeah, of course. But pobić is to stay, pobyt, and then you're having all of this, and you can easily mix up staying with beating.
Especially if you're not... When you're not, I think a lot of these that I have are from early days where I was really struggling to have conversations and people would say things to me, and so often I really didn't know what people were talking about, or I would just completely get it wrong and say something ridiculous.
To be and to hit are very similar. So it's quite difficult for us. Well, I have one about my son, and again, it's back to cars. I guess I've been stuck in cars, into the circle of diarrhea. So geography and cars.
The rondo of diarrhea.
So the one thing I have here is, of course, my son. He was all of 5 years old. We were driving in the car, and he says, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." He's saying in Polish, "Look at Pachołki on the street." What the hell is Pachołki? Maybe it's Silesian slang. That's always the way to get out of it. Like, okay, I don't know. It's some sort of Silesian slang.
Ask your grandmother.
Yes, Pachołki. And I was like, I don't know what it is. And then he says to me in Polish, he says, "Daddy, when are you going to finally learn this language? Because I can't take it anymore." Well, the thing is that Pachołka, right, Pachołki, they're Pachołek and Pachołki pachołki, the plural, is traffic cones. And in English, we have only one word, cone, and they have 3 words.
Yeah.
Which it always drives me crazy because then you think you know one word and then you use it in another context.
And everyone laughs at you.
And
And you
you're
don't
like-
really know what you're being laughed at about until later. Then, even
You
years
realize.
later, you'll realize, oh my God.
Because in Polish, they have stożek when they're talking
Yeah.
about geometry, right? That's with its cone being a shape.
Right.
And then they have rożek, which ice cream cone would be the most common, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's something
the
to do with
horn,
like a horn, like a
right?
unicorn
Róg,
horn.
right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Right.
And then, of course, pachołek, which of course would be traffic cone. But in English, you could get away with saying
So
cone,
your
cone, cone,
Look out, there's
finished.
a cone there on the road, or
Yeah.
a cone in your geometry class, or yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to say, oh, that's a geometrical cone, or that's an ice cream cone, and that there is a traffic cone. No, it's just cone.
Cone. It's a cone.
Okay.
It's a cone.
All right.
Okay, back
And you're
to
you're moving on to an interesting
an
subject.
interesting one. Okay, so in Poland there are quite a few boars that live in the forest. I mean, they on the outskirts of
A boar, just explain, of course, is
yeah,
dzik.
it's a dzik in Polish,
in
right?
Polish. Wild
And
boar.
A wild, okay, yeah, it's a wild breed of pig. Okay, so you have them, on the outskirts of most towns or in the woods, anywhere you have, people and forest, and you get these wild boars that wander around. So early on, I was trying to tell somebody that I'd seen one or that there were some in the woods. And
Be careful.
Yeah, because a lot of times when you go out walking, someone will say, "Be careful! I saw some boars. You better,
Which, of course, in
stay out of
America,
here."
I've never had this experience. Do you, in the Midwest, have boar?
I guess they have them in the woods and stuff, but it was
They
never
never
a
come
thing
to
where you had
residential
to really
areas.
think about them, as I guess it's more like alligators in Florida or something, But anyway, no, they were never in my consciousness at all in the States. So anyway, someone said, we were talking about these animals, and I couldn't get the word dzik, which is the name for them, dzik, and it's kind of close to the word wild, dziki. So I was trying to tell them about, well, they're wild pigs. So instead of saying dzika świnia, right, like a wild pig, I instead used the word for ham, szynka. So I said, oh yes, I saw a Dzika Szynka, a wild ham in the woods, which my husband thinks to this day is hilarious, and I will never live this one down.
Maybe you had quite an appetite for wild boar.
Wild boar, yeah. So I suppose if you have some wild boar that you're dining on, it could be your Dzika Szynka.
No, I didn't, but I don't think so.
It's dzik.
Well,
What is it? Dziczyzna.
Yeah, that's what they would say.
Although I did have a guy
Game
call
is what we
my
would
cat Dziczyzna. There was this crazy toothless junk man. I was walking my cat.
Sure he wasn't a bour?
He said, "Ja lubię dziczyznę," and my cat immediately went. He got big cat eyes. But anyway, so I thought it was any kind of game. Is it any kind of like deer? Could you call
Oh,
that
it's any
dziczyzna
type of
too?
game. It's game.
Okay.
That's a good word to know for
Game.
you, as that game means wild meat.
Right.
We use that for any type of wild meat. So
Okay.
we use game.
Dziczyzna.
Right.
So, but anyway, if you're talking about the porcine variety, I don't think you can call it a wild ham unless you want somebody to really
It could be a
not
new
to.
version, a new company.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on to another topic. Again, I was with my son. I was reading a book about firemen. And this word, it really is just a simple one, is posiłek.
Right.
Which you learned pretty early on is meal.
It's a meal, yeah.
Right? Now, I was reading a book and they said, like, for example, this about firemen or it was the police, policja, czeka na posiłki. And I thought to myself, oh, they're getting some food. They're going to have a little bit of food. And my son started laughing at me, of course. He said, no, what I didn't realize, it has 2 meanings in Polish. Posiłek means not only meal, but also reinforcements.
Yeah.
So they were waiting for reinforcements. Instead, I had this image of these police officers waiting for donuts coming to them.
That's
So,
hilarious.
of course, it's not correct. But as with many English words, they have more than one meaning. And you have to be able to understand that. And sometimes I get so focused on the one meaning that you just can't possibly understand the other meaning. And you have to really look into the dictionary or ask someone who can
And
help
you
you.
just have to wait till you come across it. You never know. You'll never learn them all. Something's going to come along and surprise you.
And which brings us to your word, which is a
Yeah.
classic. It's one of my favorites.
Well, this is a similar situation where it's one word, 2 very different meanings. So I had a class at an office. It was a business English class, and this man had to do a presentation one day.
It was probably 7 o'clock in the morning.
It was 7 o'clock in the morning in Tihi, which is quite a ways from here. So I come in there, and this gentleman presents me with a presentation he would like to work on that he's supposed to give, I believe, that day or the next day. It was he had big time constraints. I said, no problem, this is relatively simple. We'll just go through. I'll make some little corrections. Well, it turns out, and this was a while ago, so these programs are probably much better now, but he ran it through something like, not even Google, I think it was like Babelfish. And it came out as utter nonsense for the most part. And specifically, he was writing about supply chain management. And the word for supply in Polish is zapas. Now, that's all fine, but another meaning for the word zapas is wrestling. So this thing translated the word zapas as wrestling and wrestling management. So
it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I was utterly confused. I just was, and the rest of the text didn't make a lot of sense either. So I read, a page or so, and I still couldn't even figure out what this was.
What would that mean? Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and the rest of it didn't make a lot of sense either. So I finally just had to ask him. I said, can you tell me what your presentation is about? Because I really, really can't tell. I just told him, I think we have to do this all over again because you can't do this presentation. But it was so he was going to get up there and talk about wrestling management to a room full of Germans or something. So yeah. So we got through it.
So it had two meanings.
Two meanings. Yes.
And this is what happens with who knew? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Who would think that supply and wrestling? But it does. It has the same meaning.
And I think I even knew it at the time. I just wasn't prepared to have that.
When you get presented with something like that, you say, oh, wrestling management. You think, oh my gosh, okay, what is this going to be about? You're just so curious, and then you find out it's just a mistranslation. I have the same thing. Another word. It in fact involves the two of us. Years ago, we decided to go down, take a train ride from Katowice down to Pszczyna.
Okay,
and we wanted to see the palace.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of an adventure because we had never been there before.
Right.
And I decided that maybe we should go and see the palace, let's do that. And I had been living elsewhere. I had not been living in Poland at that time. And so I didn't want to use Polish at all because you were better. And I thought, Amanda, could you just ask the question, where is the castle? Now, one thing you need to know about us Americans is castle. I'm telling the truth. You'll remember. It's a castle.
I remember this day, but I don't remember some.
This castle, palace.
Right.
It all is this. We have Zamek, Pachołki, right? Dwór, manor house, dworek. We don't really palace. Castle. It's all kind of the same to us Americans. Now, Britain, of course, is different, but we just don't have them.
Yeah.
For the most part, we don't have them. A castle and a palace, we would easily confuse. So, of course, we were there, and there is a small palace/castle complex, whatever.
Right.
And you went in, and I said, we need to ask where this is, because there were no signs. We didn't have GPS. There was the mobile phones were ridiculous. The cell phones were ridiculous. We didn't have any coordinates. And we wanted to know where it was. And you asked the man, can you tell me where Zamek is?
Zamek, okay.
Yeah.
And you think, well, this is the famous thing in this town. So
that's what we would think.
Everybody knows.
Yeah, of course. Yes, it's got to be the big castle.
Right.
And he looked at you strangely, and he said, it's in every shop. And then we had a little bit. We had to say, oh my gosh, he's talking about a lock.
Right.
He had assumed that we were foreigners looking for a lock because Zamek, of course, in Polish is one and the same, lock and castle.
Yeah.
And of course, in Pszczyna, there isn't a castle, there's a pałac, a palace. And so when we say castle in American English, just know that we might be talking about almost anything that's historical.
Yeah, and then you have zipper too, right?
Of course, thank you.
Yeah.
Zipper, or British English, zip.
The zip. Yeah, so there's that confusion too. So maybe he thought I wanted to fix my, jacket zipper or something. Who knows what this man thought, But yeah, so, and it was not, and there was no sort of like, oh, these tourists from another country must possibly be looking for the famous castle in town. This is the only thing going on in this town, by the way.
Yeah, but they don't think like that.
Yeah.
Come on. They're just like, oh, okay, Zamek, why are you speaking Polish? You're bizarre, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And you have a strange accent. Oh, the lock, go to a shop. Leave me alone. So we just wanted to show you that there are so many mistakes that we make, and that sometimes are absolutely hilarious, whether it has to do about diarrhea or pimps, or whether it has to do about perverts or castles. For For the most part, we do make mistakes, and we
Yeah.
make quite a bit of them. And when you're learning, you will make mistakes.
You will make them, and you'll have great stories to tell. So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
And you'll remember the word all the more because
you
of
will,
it.
because it'll be connected to
Because reinforcement,
humiliation and laughing
reinforcement, I don't think any Polish
yeah.
student is going to remember quite easily. Reinforcements. But
Reinforcements.
posiłek,
Yeah.
I'm going to remember because I made that mistake. And that experience is really important. When you make a mistake, you remember it, well, you should remember, and continue on. Well, not making mistakes, continue using the language. And we really hope that you are able to learn a little bit of English with us and have a little bit of perspective so you feel more comfortable speaking English.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, thanks for watching.
And I hope you had a good laugh. Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.